Bad news for me, I've now got to talk about one of my favorite childhood franchises. Take a look at this. Of the 4,500 recent reviews for Total War Warhammer 3, only 22% are positive. So it's safe to say it's been a bad month for Creative Assembly. It's more of a review nuke than a review bomb. And the funny thing is, it all started with a bug that players didn't think was being fixed fast enough. But it's safe to say it's gone far beyond that, as the last few weeks are being treated as essentially a referendum on everything that's been wrong with Creative Assembly or Total War, and a big opportunity for players to punish them for said failures. And so far, unlike the last few times, there is no sign that players have any intention of reverting these reviews. People seem real angry, and for Creative Assembly, it's a worst possible timing, and that's because they staked everything on pulling off a massive 25th anniversary celebration that would reveal what's next for the franchise. But with their current game in fire, that's not looking like a safe bet. Total War is no stranger to review bombs, though we're not quite in Shadows of Change territory here. It's not that bad. It is pretty bad though, and if you're not aware, Shadows of Change was a DLC that was basically just shrinkflation. There was less content and it costed more. People were rightly pissed. Now, the overall picture of things is that even now, with all the bad stuff that's happened, just a few percentage points of good reviews will bring the game back to being mostly positive on Steam, overall. But it's when we look at the last month that we see the noticeable dip. People are mad about everything from expensive DLC to updates breaking the game, that you need the previous games to play all the factions, and that new content is sparse. And by the way, it absolutely is sparse. I remember the DLC cadence of Total War Warhammer 2. It was blistering. Now it is a comparative trickle. But most importantly, the complaints are about bugs. And in this case, one specific bug that kicked off this whole story. The timeline of events is key to the story, so let's just go through it. Update 6.3 launched September 2nd after a weekend beta, as Creative Assembly had to fix an AMD hardware bug. Now, it was a free update. It overhauled the Lizardmen and the Tomb Kings factions, which came from the second and first Total War Warhammer games. And the changes were substantial. They covered economy, unit, resources, just lots of overhauls. And it was all in service of making them match the other factions in the game, actually them feeling like modern factions. But players immediately noticed something rather wrong, that sometimes the AI-controlled leaders of these factions would be completely broken. By broken, I mean they wouldn't build armies, which is kind of important in a Total War game. They also wouldn't leave their territory, so they would just immediately get wiped, and this would ruin the game's balance. It would essentially mess up people's whole campaigns. So people noticed this, they reported this, and CA got to work. By September 18th, we got a beta for a hotfix, and that was planned for a September 23rd release. This update would, to quote it, help to address the unintended AI behavior. At least that's what CA thought. During that beta, though, on the 19th, their head of community, Adam Freeman, tells Reddit users that the Lizardmen issue is actually, quote, the tip of a small iceberg. And it turns out their hotfix wouldn't be fixing that problem. The good news was that the community built a workaround, but even the modders involved said that, look, it's better, but it's not a true fix to the problem. Now, thus far in our story, we've got the seeds of something bad, but no review bomb. But the review bomb is to come, and here's where it happens. The patch notes frame this as, quote, the final planned game update before the release of the Tides of Torment DLC and patch 7.0, which was slated for late October. That was not the best line, because it basically meant, yeah, there's this beta for, a hotfix that's actually not going to be fixing the problem that you guys all care about. No, that problem is going to be fixed much later, along with a paid DLC. This was not great, and if the hotfix was able to solve the problem, then it all would have worked out fine. But obviously, things did not work out fine. By October 1st, everything changes. That's where we see the start of negative reviews. 57 October 1st, and by October 6th, we are at a rate of 672 negative reviews a day. And by this date, we had went 7 days of the patch not working. So you may be wondering, why the shift? Well, some people have pointed to a video from Legend of Total War highlighting the issue on October 1st. And in the video, he suggests that if players aren't happy with the bugs, or, the suggestion that the bugs won't be fixed anytime soon, then they should let Creative Assembly know, including by using Steam reviews. But here's the thing, when you line up the dates, the uptick in negative reviews is not immediate. but it does seem that it kicked off a chain of discussion that made this story get bigger and bigger and bigger. So the floodgates opened. Public perception from the patch notes is that Creative Assembly aren't planning on fixing a fundamentally broken game until they can do that fix alongside a paid DLC. That doesn't look great. That's the overall public narrative, but there are some comments from the studio that we should actually know about. On October 2nd, Freeman highlighted in the subreddit that he and his team have been talking about the issue on streams and in posts for at least a week now, and he confirmed that they want to get a fix out faster than 7.0, but that basically just depends on whether they can get something together that works. And as it would happen, they did. 14 working days after the first hotfix, October 6th, Creative Assembly announced that they have a second hotfix in development. The lead technical designer, Radislav, explained what happened, where effectively this bug wasn't caused by update 6.3 in the faction rework, but it was revealed by it. Every faction that uses pooled resources is impacted by this, and previously it was only a few lords that were hit, so CA would get an occasional trickle of reports. But with the Tomb Kings and Lizardman economy reworks, it was now happening on a far larger scale. So, they then did apologize for the problems, and they announced that they are delaying any new DLC news or marketing for now so that they can focus on this issue. And this extends to Total War's 25th anniversary streams and co-marketing with the likes of Games Workshop, so this is hitting them on an organizational scale. Now on October 14th, a week later, CA rolled out patch 6.3.2, with this seemingly being to fix the issue. And it came alongside an apology and an explanation that they didn't classify the bug strongly enough before 6.3.1, basically thinking that they could just wait until the next full patch so the technical teams could roll everything together. Obviously, that didn't work, and it kicked off a bit of a worst-case scenario of PR. Going forward, any AI reports like this will require hotfixes rather than waiting for patches, and otherwise they're delaying the Tides of Torment DLC until December 4th, but they are releasing a trailer, and they showed off the new mod manager that's coming to the game. When we check in Steam, we see the negative reviews slow after the 6th, and they're almost back to parity with the positive ones now. But here's the thing, it's not just about one bug, it is about something far larger between players and this company, and that's why some of the changes players have wanted to see have not exactly been forthcoming. So, when we zoom out big picture, this bug in itself is mostly fairly understandable, but they absolutely could have done a better job in communicating it, not just having things stuffed away in Reddit. So, a bunch of things kind of cocked up, but you can understand it. Creative Assembly implements some new systems, their testing didn't pick up an extra effect that they had in some NPC factions, then when it hits public, it becomes way more apparent, and evidently they went and tried to fix it and found out that it was no easy thing to fix, because actually it revealed fundamental problems in the game that went way deeper. I get that from an engineering perspective, right? But obviously, this isn't just about engineering, it is about PR, and it's about player confidence. And you see that in the reviews. Looking through them, people aren't just mad about this bug. The fact that this was going on before 6.3 drops was kind of just more ammunition to them, proof that, oh yeah, they'll do the updates, but only when it's also alongside something that I can buy. The idea was basically that, despite an overhaul of AI earlier on this summer, that the systems and the design of the game simply don't work as a whole. And honestly, there's times whenever I've played this game where, yeah, you do just feel weird, funky business absolutely everywhere. Because, well, yeah, it's a huge game. It's cobbled together out of other games. And based on years of leaks, our understanding is that its codebase is kind of like a big ball of spaghetti that's held together with hairspray. Weird analogy, but whatever, I'll go with it. Point basically is, something's fundamentally foobar, it's been foobar for a long ass time, and people don't have faith that it will no longer be foobar in the near future. And it really is a mess. I mean, you've got the idea that every update, however well intentioned, breaks the game, and that's happening as Creative Assembly are just trying to crank out more DLC. But other people are also saying, hey, there's a complete lack of new DLC. I mean, Tides of Torment is the only release planned this year. That is kind of crazy. It's just a mess on all fronts. Some others also frame this state of affairs as the reason why Legend of Total War has announced his departure from content creation for this game franchise, despite that not being the whole story behind his departure as he laid out in his own video. So yeah, the info space is a bit of a mess, but basically, long-standing bugs and problems from previous updates don't seem to be getting fixed, even as modders claim that they're finding ways to implement changes. All of this has stuck with the community, and it absolutely sucks, especially with a game as complex as this one, and one with the fundamental potential of a massive combined Warhammer Total War game. But it does make sense. It makes complete sense to me, because you just need to look at the studio. You just need to look at the series. Whenever we heard, even us directly, from Creative Assembly insiders back in 2023, the story was that they had massive volumes of technical debt in how their games were built and maintained. Lots of different forks of the engine from different games all cobbled together, a total nightmare. And to make matters worse, consider that this is across a game that's been worked on for more than a decade, with the teams who led those games apparently being believed to have handed this over to the team at Creative Assembly Sophia after they finished up with Pharaoh. So, a team who basically are left having to balance generating revenue from DLC with keeping existing players happy with free updates like the 6.3 update was intended to be, and also while trying to work on existing problems and bugs. All that at the same time when they've basically been dealt a really shit hand in the form of a nightmare stack of technology that they've got to work with. Now that's a lot of plates to keep spinning, especially after two massive rounds of layoffs that occurred in 2023 and 2024. That means Creative Assembly are not in a position where they can just keep throwing money and resources into Total War Warhammer 3, which absolutely goddamn sucks. And of course, well, it is their own actions that have probably led us to this position. The years of getting things wrong, even the entire botched launch of Total War Warhammer 3. I mean, goddamn, the initial campaign that it launched with, what the hell were they thinking? Ultimately, it's people in the front line having to deal with problems outside of their control, seemingly, the result of management decisions that, let's just say, are highly debated, and with Sega, corporate owner who has been very publicly exiting European development. Add to that the basic fact that they can't just be a DLC machine, that they will actually need to, make a new game at some point in time. By all accounts, that is one of the plates that they're spinning, and we're going to know all about it pretty soon. So let's get to grips with the future of this franchise. Now, the important thing for you to understand is that Creative Assembly was publishing yearly releases for most of its existence. And as the games got in some ways more complex, that led to things just running into the ground. Now, that will be at least 2026, 3 years removed from Total War Pharaoh without a new release. That would mean that this would be the longest wait for a new Creative Assembly game since 1993, before I was born. Yeah, they've been cranking out games for a long-ass time. Now, on December 4th, alongside the Tides of Torment DLC for Total War Warhammer 3 releasing, they're also going to show more for that game. But broadly, the expectation is that it will be wound down, because the future is in their new historical and fantasy games. These are the games Creative Assembly are promising to showcase this year. They're basically new games that will effectively act as fresh starts. That's the reason they slammed the brakes on new releases. Evidently, they in no way could have kept on going without basically killing the franchise. And with that comes a promise of new code bases, of things actually being developed halfway right, at least in an ideal case, and basically several years of development for new systems and fresh settings, games that maybe will feel less like continual reskins of the last game. And even the promise that these will be spicy games for old people with a higher age rating, though that's just because they are no longer upselling blood as an additional DLC. Still can't believe they did that. And also, no pre-order faction bonuses. It's much like another video we did recently about Activision just trying to scream from the rooftops, "Hello, core enthusiast audience, please come back, please, we really need money." They're just trying to stop the bad shit that made short-term money because they've maybe realized that, yeah, their enthusiasts actually goddamn matter, and you cannot take them for granted and just treat them as little pay pigs who will always buy next product. Now, that fresh start is something the Total War Warhammer 3 literally never had, not even from its first planning session, because it was linked to the previous two games, requiring all of their DLC to work with code that probably would have been, compatible throughout. So the but fundamental changes were hard to maintain. I've no doubt that what they wanted to do was a repeat of Total War Warhammer 2, where they could just crank out cool new factions that people could buy and they could have lovely high Steam numbers. But obviously, the development of Warhammer 3 kinda broke the back of that franchise, and they have just been limping forward since. So if it feels like the game you care about has had way fewer resources and budget assigned to it, that's almost certainly because they realized shit's fucked, that it's completely messed up, that they kind of need a fresh start. So I would imagine that's why they've got their multiple studios working on new things that are not going to be fundamentally foobar from the start, where they presumably won't be inheriting the bad mistakes, the rushed technical decisions that all came from an era of them cranking product. And I really remember the rot setting in with Rome 2. Rome 2 was one of the most disappointing moments that I've had in my history with gaming as a hobby. And since then, yearly product, lots of DLC, just trying to keep it going and going and going, all while seeing dwindling, spiky success and just accruing more and more cuts, more and more scar tissue, to the point where, with Pharaoh and Warhammer 3, it just goddamn died. And of course it died. Look at how it was being ran. So, they've basically got to deliver a whole new future, one that's credible, one that people can actually believe. And that is why this whole drama around this one book is, I would say, the worst case nightmare PR scenario, because they have everything riding on the 25th anniversary. So the last thing that they needed was this. But this is what they've got, and they've got it for reasons that are fairly obvious. And hey, if my tease about Activision looking kind of weak and desperate and maybe panicking a bit, that kind of whet your appetite, well, you can learn about that story in this video next.